This is Jay Marks with the Oklahoman and News OK, and I'm here today with Henry Crichlow, a petroleum engineer from Norman with about 40 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. What do you think of the latest efforts to stem the oil spill in the Gulf by BP?
My personal opinion at this point is that the efforts are not effective and they're not being well thought out to get their hands around the problem. It's a very complex, a very large problem, and I think the BP approach is very limited in the way they're approaching the size and complexity of this problem.
Are they just not used to what they're dealing with? I mean, it seems like they should know what they're doing because it's their project.
That's a misconception. BP is a very large company, but the operational level is dictated by the man and woman power at the tip of the sword. And those people are the ones who are effectively charged in getting this done. And my observations are the following. If you were to look at what came out of the effort of the 200 plus scientists that BP is employing at this point to trigger a good response, the results do not show that this kind of manpower is being effectively utilized. I would expect a lot better results from PhD physicists and engineers working on a problem like this. It's not a difficult problem, it's a complex problem. There are many parts, and the scientists, from what I see and what I heard, they are accustomed to good clean-cut solutions or good clean-cut problems. This problem is muddy in a metaphorical sense, plus an engineering sense. And the kind of person has to be one that has been in the trenches on this problem, not a good analytical physicist who walks in the door.
Okay. Does BP have those people, or do they need to reach outside the company a little more?
BP doesn't have those people. BP is a typical integrated oil company, and I've worked for two of those, Mobil and Texaco. They're not in-house. They may have some consultants who are capable, but they don't have on hand the ability to call these people in, but they do exist. It's my opinion that we should broaden the net to pull in these people who actually, on a day-to-day basis, work on blowouts, and I don't see that happening.
Do you think a third party, maybe the government, should get involved and take over oversight on this? Obviously, BP is still going to foot the bill, but should somebody else be running the show?
Well, that's going to open up a whole can of worms, legally and operationally and bureaucratically. My solution is the undersea blowout problem, the surface problem, and the onshore problem. The onshore, get the Army involved. The surface, get NOAA and the Coast Guard involved. Subsea, let BP stay in there because they can do the heavy lifting. Like I said, it's a complex problem, but it's not a difficult problem.
What do you think of the effort that's underway right now?
The top hat, I give it less than a 50% chance of being successful. And basically, there are three reasons. It's not going to fit snugly. I still believe it's going to form hydrates. Anytime gas and water get together below 60 degrees Fahrenheit and higher than 1,000 pounds pressure, you will have hydrates. It's going to be a very difficult deal to keep the gas from contacting cold water. And thirdly, there's what we call in engineering the sucking effect or the Venturi effect. When you move a fluid fast, it begins to suck things in like a tornado. That is going to bring in a lot of seawater, cold seawater, and then you're going to have another problem.
Okay. What is your solution, do you think? What do you think's what's it going to take to stop the flow of oil into the Gulf or contain it?
Given the fact that they have now cut the riser, I think the only viable solution at this point is some modification of the top kill in which BP brings to bear as many pumps as possible in excess of 50 or 60,000 horsepower and circulate enough seawater into the blowout preventer like they were doing with the mud. I believe that we can actually use the Gulf of Mexico to save the Gulf of Mexico. You actually choke it off with the Gulf.
Okay. Now, in the big picture, do you think that this moratorium on offshore drilling should hold, or is this something we can still do safely under the right circumstances?
That is an easy answer. If you look at the last 10 blowouts in the Gulf, which I have looked at, and look at the history of the Gulf, we have a blowout about every 385 wells we drill. We have one blowout every 385. They're not serious. They're what we call kicks that get out of control. The largest and most pernicious cause of blowouts is complacent, careless drilling. Very little to do with equipment. In this particular case, there were 7 events that led up to the blowout, 6 of which were not seen. The last one was seen too late. The problem is the ability of the operations people to maintain what we consider safe conditions all the time. These are like pilots. You have no mistake in landing a 747 in the dark. You have to land it every time. Mm-hmm. There are checklists, there are automatic controls, there are warnings. That's why we land 14,000 jets every day and nobody gets killed, usually. That's where we have to really jack up the requirements that these people treat drilling like we treat flying. There are regulations that must be met. There are technologies that must be utilized. Every time there's a plane crash, we go in, we update what we do. We haven't been doing this in the oil and gas industry.
Do you think there's a will now by the industry, at least within the industry, to accept greater regulation in order to get those privileges back?
Oh, it has to be. I mean, just look at what happens to your stock if you don't do it right. There'll be more than just the regulation driving these guys. They may be driven out of business if they don't do it right. So they have to look at ways to up the ante as far as maintaining a good and strict engineering practice.
Perfect. I think that gets us where we need to be. I appreciate your time, and thanks
Thank
for
you very
visiting
much.
with us today on newsok.com.